closed practices are not real, and anybody can work with something worth it. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care how elitist somebody wants to act. There's no such thing as a closed practice.
I'm glad you stopped by. This is another TikTok video that is raising a lot of concern on TikTok right now. And following the videos you've heard previously about cultural appropriation and also other things that we've talked about culture, I've linked the videos in the comment just for you to connect. It's better that you watch other videos so that you get to understand where we come from and why is it important for us to look at culture closed practices, even as we look at culture and its broadness and things coming up. So this is a video that raises a lot of concern. So many people are saying that culture practices should be closed, and there are practices that are closed. So this is a question that I want to ask you guys. What is that cultural practices? What are those what is that cultural practice that is closed in your culture? What is that thing that somebody who is not of your community cannot practice? Before then, listen to this.
The people that get on TikTok and argue about closed practices every 3 months, I have a question for y'all. Why do you have keys to your house? Shouldn't anybody just be able to walk up in there? Why can't I just go inside your home, rearrange stuff, take stuff, borrow stuff? Why do you have a lock and key? What are you hiding? Isn't the land meant to be shared? Why do you think it's okay for you to have a lock and key for your house, your apartment, your home? Does that make sense to you? For you to safeguard the things in your house? Why can't I just come in there and just take what I want? Why can't anybody just go up in your house and borrow something? Like, why do you need to have it locked? Because you see, it's funny to me how y'all understand safeguarding certain things in life, like your home. But when it comes to BIPOC spiritual practices, there's a ridiculous amount of entitlement that makes y'all dismiss pure logic. Instead of looking into your own ancestral practices that have been lost due to white on white crime with colonization, doing research, reconnecting to your own European cultures, your own indigenous European cultures, y'all will sit here and every 3 months start this argument on TikTok about closed practices and whether or not it's racist to have closed practices, whether or not it's okay to safeguard certain spiritual systems. Sitting here and whining about why you can't access a door because it is locked to you, because you don't have the key. You haven't been entrusted with the key. And so you want to kick and scream outside of a house because you don't have access to it. Yet your own home stays locked up and all of your stuff is safeguarded and protected. It's not complicated. It's very easy to understand. Life is not going to be a buffet. There are literally certain things that you're never going to have access to.
You might be here and wonder, what are those cultural practices? What does it look like? So here is an example, and he's trying to explain this cultural practice that is closed in this particular community and its meaning. I don't know the accuracy of this, but if you have something accurate to emphasize on what he's saying, kindly let's share our thoughts. Kindly do so, please.
I just keep saying the same thing, that some of you guys have like this really big payout coming, and for some of you guys.
Hi, I'm not sure if you know this, but the deck that you're using is from a closed practice known as hoodoo. Hoodoo along with voodoo, they're both closed practices that were used by enslaved Africans in order to preserve aspects of their traditional religions, which colonizers and enslavers literally beat and genocided out of them. And also hoodoo, you need to be initiated in order to practice it, and I can guarantee you that you're not. So you need to find a new deck, and if you would like suggestions, I'm more than happy to give you some. This one is my current favorite. It's called the Cosmic Slumber Tarot. Highly recommend. And that is one of many decks that exist that do not involve cultural appropriation, so I highly recommend finding another one.
There's the comment stated up there. You might also be wondering, why are these cultural practices closed? Why are they closed practices? This is what these few clips that I'll be playing here will be explaining to you. let's interact kindly. I really don't have much to speak about this. I want to learn along with you guys. Thank you.
Super icky comment. Closed practices aren't closed because of skin. They're closed because of consent and prerequisites. Access to spirit isn't closed. Access to God isn't closed. Access to the spirits of the land isn't closed, but practices can be closed because a practice can have a prerequisite. Imagine never taking a math class in your life and then enrolling in a calculus class. You would fail. But if you really wanted to take that calculus class, you could ask for permission, and you'd have to ask the experts that are associated with that practice. And if you are an occultist, you should know that esoteric practices are esoteric for a reason. They're only known by a few because they're kind of like getting a very specific key to a very specific door, and what's on the other side of that door has permission to respond when you insert the key or knock. And there are literally infinite doors. So why are you so concerned with knocking on doors that have the prerequisite of blood, your very DNA? Find another door.
Friendly reminder when it comes to closed practices that most of the time they're closed for your sake. There are so many different closed practices that come with repercussions if you are not properly initiated into that practice. These practices are heavily guarded by the spirits that revolve around those practices. People's ancestors, different land spirits, all of that nature. If you're trying to cross these boundaries in which you do not have the right to cross, you are going to get fucked up. Like, of course, respecting them is so important when it comes to morality and ethics. But if you put that all aside, if you keep crossing these boundaries of people's ancestors, if you are crossing these boundaries, you are crossing the spirit of that practice. You are doing a lot more than just being disrespectful. Especially because of colonization. A lot of these practices are closed because of how sacred they are. A lot of them are closed because there has to be a specific connection between that practice and your culture. And even the closed practices that don't have repercussions specifically for dishonoring them or disrespecting them, the spirits and ancestors behind those practices will still fuck you up. That's just the truth.
This is probably the last time I'm going to talk about this topic because of all the tomfoolery going on this fucking app. But if you are in a closed practice, or if you see yourself as an ally of the people that represent the energy of a closed practice, then you should already know why a practice is closed. And if you are an outsider, there's a reason why you're a fucking outsider. For you to come in and plow your way through, just like how you did my people so long ago and made them go to different areas of this fucking world, basically making pit stops so we can separate ourselves even further as time progressed. And y'all see that we prevailing in this lifetime, and now y'all want a piece of that? Move y'all caucus show steppers on somewhere, because ain't nobody got time for that shit.
There are people of every color in all kinds of...
I find it wild how certain people continue to choose to do these think pieces on things they have no authority or true knowledge of. But to put it very simply, the fundamental part of most closed practices is an ancestral line to your ancestors. It's ancestral magic. And we're talking about the spirits of people who were stolen from, taken from their homelands, had to hide their magic, lost so much of their culture. And you think that people have a right to steal from their ancestors and their magic because a book was published? If you truly had respect for the practice, for the magic, for the ancestors, it would just be like, okay, that's not for me, and move on. I've never understood that before. I know what practices are not open to me, and I respect them from afar and would never dabble. I don't understand how it's possible to have an entire world, an entire, just a plethora of knowledge and a wealth of information and energy to practice with, and you still choose to want to take from people who have been taken from so much. I don't understand.
The next thing is some practices that are closed are already published in books. So does that make them open? So here is the answer to that question. So I I don't know how accurate this is, but it's something that has gotten a lot of views. Let's try to bring light into things that people believe may be out of, let me say, without like criticizing what they believe in. Let's look at that. Leave your thoughts kindly, it will make an impact.
Those practices are now open because they have been published.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Incorrect. Just because something is published in a book, regardless of how accurate it is or not, does not mean that closed practices are now open. It doesn't matter what information you read in a book, honey. That does not mean you are exempt from following protocol. All right? You still have to go and find an elder. You still have to go and get your readings. You still have to see if the spirits of those practices even want you. Okay? These are cultural practices, and for a lot of us, it is a way of life. A way of life. You can't just take different aspects of a way of life and reject the rest that you don't want for your own practice and benefit. It doesn't work that way. And yes, there's a lot more that goes into it, but that notion about the books, you're incorrect.
Closed practices, what are they? Let's put it this way, if you say you don't believe in closed practices, you're saying that you don't believe in respecting boundaries. Because not all practices are intended for everybody. Now, the lists of types of closed practices are more than I can comfortably go over in 3 minutes or less. But let's go over some of the most basic reasons as to why a practice would be closed. First of all, many practices are a part of a culture that you have to be a part of in order to even begin to understand it. One of the reasons why Lilith is such a contentious topic is because there are many parts of her that are very much explicitly closed. I think one of the greatest misconceptions is people are under this generalized impression that all magic is witchcraft. But this very much is not the case. There are even open traditions and open practices that are generally referred to as witchcraft that are actually not at all. Things such as goetic magic and generalized necromancy are actually sorcery and not witchcraft. Let's utilize another example, white sage. White sage itself isn't a practice. However, it is a part of indigenous practices that are closed, and it is an incredibly sacred medicine. The practices in which it is properly utilized are closed. And since white sage is over-harvested and poached, most of what you're going to find is not ethically sourced. All of these reasons and so many more is why white sage is closed. Furthermore, there are some portions and sections and branches of otherwise open religions that are closed. Kemeticism is not necessarily closed. However, there are many different branches and practices within Kemeticism that very much are closed. And in this regard, you need to be invited from somebody who is, and then furthermore initiated in order to be able to practice properly, ethically, and appropriately. There are also instances where certain traditions are part of a family lineage. So nobody outside of that family is going to be practicing that. The last thing I want to note here is the free and open cultural exchange of various different cultures and religions in antiquity is not an excuse to say that things aren't closed. Because even within those religions and cultures that were being exchanged and shared, there were still things that were closed and were not shared. All of this just to come back around to the point to say, if you claim you don't believe in closed practices, you are telling everybody you don't believe in respecting boundaries. And this is not a definitive list, this is not an end-all be-all. There are things that I definitely...
Practice is closed, you are racist. I don't care what practice is.
Nope. For us in the indigenous community, it's closed, and we will keep closing it, and we will keep protecting it. That way it is alive and well for our generations of children and the next generation after that, because those that came before us fought to keep and preserve that. There's those that died and their blood spilled to keep those practices alive and well for us. And there are many tribes and nations that are out there that still don't have it to this day, that are trying to piece it all back together. So when we get something back, why would we open it up for anyone else to taint it or take it from us or mock it or not know exactly what it is that they're doing? Like, are you shitting me? There's many of us that are still trying to fight just to keep our language alive. You know how difficult that is for us, our songs, our dances. There's a very serious reason and specific reason why there are many in the indigenous community that won't even sometimes share with people within our own community, because we don't want something that is so sacred to us to be exploited, to be used for something bad. So sorry, not sorry, you're goddamn right, we're gonna keep it closed each and every time. And if it means just being name called by someone like you, so be it. Fuck it.
That is incorrect. This comment was made in relation to Romani culture.
Just to reiterate what Hecate and Foodie was talking about, they were saying that just because you have the blood of a particular culture, it doesn't automatically mean that you could start practicing some of the religions out there that are closed. And I am a prime example of this. I was born into a religion called Dao Mao, sort of mixed with Buddhism and Taoist practices, but specifically Dao Mao is an indigenous Vietnamese tradition. My grandma was a medium shaman, so was her mother and her mother before that. But in order for me to practice the religion, I have to be initiated. Like what Hecate and Foodie was talking about with Korean shamanism, you have to actually get along with a shaman in order to get initiated. And I am at odds with one of the main shamans that my family associates with. So he always shows up at my aunt's Dao Mao rituals. And my aunt is an initiate as well. Like at the moment, I'm probably more likely to be initiated into Santeria because I talk with that community a lot more, and I actually speak more Spanish than Vietnamese. And I guess the other thing too is, like, if you're not initiated, more often than not, the proper channels are not open and those deities will not show up.
So let's get this straight. From what I understand is watch what you are applying from a different culture. There are there are cultural practices that are ties to religious belief and different thing that people believe. So there's something small that I want to pass across here. Always know who you believe in. Like me, I believe in Jesus. I have to say this right here. And I know that Jesus came to break all those barriers because we are one in Christ, because he's the savior of the world. That's according to what I believe. And if you want to believe in this Jesus that I believe in, so it's simple. Just Google it and you'll know what to do. Maybe you've never heard of him. Yeah, but I know if also you are struggling with, let me say, some spiritual thing that you're not able to understand, he sets people free. He can set you free from things that you don't have knowledge of, and he gives freedom that the world cannot give. So if you want to experience him, look for him. He's there. He's right there. He's watching you. Post anything that any comment that is not constructive or that is aggressive, don't kindly. Also remember to share my video and also subscribe to the channel. Subscribe, click that like button, like especially for recommendation. I appreciate your time and stay blessed.